and expelled the founder of the party and the acting national chairman. Where does this leave? What do you make of this kind of politics that we see playing out?
For me, it's quite unfortunate. Reason being that the appointment of Wike is based on the laws of the land, based on the Constitution. The Constitution provides for a representative government in the sense that ministers are supposed to be appointed from all the states of the Federation. So he was appointed from Rivers State, and he is on, like he rightly put it, on national duty, meaning what he is now doing is beyond party politics. And if the party is wise, in my own thinking, they should rather encourage it, because if he performs well, he's rather promoting the party. And we should now put aside party politics and look at the interests of the nation. We should think beyond the party level, in the sense that, well, for now, elections have come and gone, and they are in tribunals. So they should wait for the tribunal's decision. But in the meantime, I think appointments have been made, and so allow the person to function. If he is not there, certainly another person would have been appointed. But in the end, it will be as if this present government is not trying to carry everybody along. And I think the act of the present government is showing unity. Showing unity. So for the party to say they are going to suspend him, well, the issue now will become what is the provision of the Constitution vis-a-vis the provision of the party's constitution. So when you look at both documents, and then you determine whether actually meant you may want to put on.
Well, he also went on to reveal that even governors of opposition political parties were made to recommend people who were supposed to serve in the Tinubu cabinet. Says the president wrote to every governor requesting that they nominate people, and all of them nominated people.
He has been nominated by his own governor. He has been appointed. So you should say he should not take up the national call. And trust me, Nigerians, the way we also do things. Tomorrow, if he had not taken it, they will also use it against him. Well, you were appointed and you refused to act. So what nationality, what he will have in terms of impunity.
Also appears for the on the APC list. Also appears for the on the APC list. So at this point, isn't there a conflict of interest?
The issue now is, yes, his name can appear anywhere, but has he started functioning? Has he made a comment in that regard? Has he accepted? Sometimes we should also not put people in position where they will begin to struggle and you create unnecessary crisis. The man do his job.
Okay, interesting. Getting on, let's talk about greeted of the world in general. We're greeted by the the putsch in Gabon, and that has sparked up several conversations around all. I mean, African leaders like to sit tight in office. We've seen several of them, and instead of actually serving their people, they only serve their personal interest, and that's of their what people have referred to as their the stringers or puppeteer masters. They say they serve the European interest against the interest of their nations. What do you make of that?
It's quite unfortunate, and perhaps that's the reason why we're seeing this. Some have called it revolution, but the real thing is cool. If you have been appointed or elected by the people, I think your primary focus should be the people. Part of the reason why we are having what I may call backwardness in Africa is because of lack of leadership. If our leaders do the right thing, and they are courageous, then you discover that the people will like them despite the economic situation or circumstance. But once you begin to do or act in a manner that shows that as a leader you are rather answerable to someone elsewhere, naturally your people will not be happy about it. So that, of course, will lead to the military taking over power, because they wouldn't want to have a state of anarchy. And I think this accounts for why we are seeing what we are seeing right now in some African countries, particularly the West African region.
What can we do to avert all of this? People have talked about good governance and all. The likes of President Tinubu, no one really envies his position right now because he has a lot to deal with in the home front. And now Africa with the tension across the continent, he, as as the president of the or leader of the most populous black nation in the world, or leader on the continent, has a responsibility. Yesterday, he was informed with world leaders. He said he's been in in conversation with world leaders to ensure that all of this is averted. We have economic crisis on our hands. The naira going. I mean, people are saying, look, there's a big possibility that within the next month, the naira against the dollar would go up to over 1,000 naira, and all of that. There is hunger. People are complaining here and there. There's hunger as a result of the removal of subsidy. Insecurity is also biting hard in the country. Now the president has to also deal with the tensions in the continent. What do you say about the role of the Nigerian president in ensuring the stability on the continent?
Of course, Nigeria is referred to as giant of Africa. So once there is any crisis in the continent, Nigeria is expected to show leadership. But again, once you do that, in showing leadership, you have to also, like you mentioned at the beginning of the program, charity begins at home. You cannot be also having crisis in your own house and then you begin to fetch water to go and quench fire in another person's house. So even if we are to intervene because we are expected to show leadership, I think we should also deploy wisdom in doing that. Most of these countries that the military have taken over, you see the people celebrating on the streets. So that tells you something. And if you now decide that, well, we need to entrench democracy, so we have to intervene, fine. How do you do that? So that you will not create enmity between your own country and the people of that country, because for them to celebrate shows that they have accepted what has happened. And of course, military rule has its own disadvantages, but whether you like it or not, it also has its own advantages, so to speak. So in relation to Nigeria, I think even if we must intervene, at this point, we shouldn't be seen being at the forefront. We can, through diplomacy, on the ground, intervene and see how we can stabilize the continent. Because, of course, if there is crisis in one part of the continent, at the end of the day, it will also affect you one way or the other. But being in the forefront while we also have our own internal issues to deal with, I don't think that is the best approach.
I'm going to say, let's bring this home a little more. People say, look, the Nigerians are saying, or Africans, or the world is saying that democracy is the best form of governance. But it seems like democracy hasn't favored the African continent. Perhaps we need to fashion out our own way of leadership or our own style of democracy to suit us and the African people. For instance, they say, look, what is really the difference between democracy in Africa and the military rule, when you see people, sometimes manipulating the constitution just to sit them and keep them in office. They disobey and disregard the judiciary. Thank God you're a member or you're a minister in the Temple of Justice. They say the courts are disrespected, disregarded. The legislative arm of government is also subservient to the executive. So what is the whole talk about democracy in Africa?
Democracy, of course, has its own advantages. And, well, I may agree that it's the best form of governance, but again, for me, the issue is not whether you are talking about democracy or not. It's about our institutions. We need to find a way. It's not even about the arms of government. It's about making sure that our institutions are functional. And for me as a lawyer, as you rightly put it, it's about the rule of law. Obey these laws as laid down, and of course obey the judgment of courts. Now, why am I talking about the institutions? Look at what is happening in the United States. Look at what is happening to Donald Trump, for instance. He has been indicted, and of course, date has been fixed for trial and what have you. Can that happen in Nigeria? Even as a sitting president, you could be investigated in the United States. Who would want to, for instance, the Inspector General of Police, to say, I want to investigate Tinubu, I'm sure they will ask him, are you really,
Are you okay?
do you know what you are doing? So if we allow our institutions to function the way they should based on law, I think we'll get there. And if everybody should act, play your role as provided by law, we'll get there. We'll get there. It may not be overnight, but again, if we follow strictly this law, for instance, talk about our economy. Our is the naira. So for me, it does not make sense because I'm going to buy something from US, or US is coming to get something from me, and then the legal tender we have to use will be the dollar. That's why we're talking about naira dollar issue. Granted, if I'm going to buy from you in the US, fine, I should use your currency. But if you're also coming to buy from me, use my currency. That way, there will be some level playing ground. And since by law, the legal tender in Nigeria is naira, then it doesn't make sense for me to be dealing with dollars. Unfortunately, even in Nigeria, there are places you go, they spend dollars. And that is the problem. That is the problem.
But perhaps are you suggesting that we look in the way of BRICS? The BRICS just recently welcomed about 6 other countries into that bloc. Should we be going in that direction? Because they are considering, currency parity and dealing with the local currencies.
See, we have to be frank with ourselves. It doesn't make sense. You as a Nigerian, you are going to Cameroon to buy something, and you begin to equate what you are going to buy using the dollar. Does that make any sense? It doesn't. I am not an economist, so I may not really understand it. But as a layman, I mean, I am going. If Cameroonians are coming to buy something in Nigeria, they should use naira. If I'm going to Cameroon to also buy, I should use their currency. It's simple. And once you do that, you discover that this dollar whole thing will become meaningless. It will have no value. So, yes, granted, maybe we should go the way of BRICS. But for me, it's beyond that. It's not just about a block of people. In all trades in the world, use this simple method. If you are going to buy something from Russia, you use their currency. If Russia is coming to buy from you, let them use yours. And that way, you even have that level playing ground. Because, and I'm looking at this from the legal perspective. If my currency by law is naira, then why should you are coming in to buy something from me? Use my currency. Because that is what the law has provided.
Well said. Let's talk about the judiciary some more. You've been at the NBA conference, and the president.
Lawyers don't like me that so much, but it's okay. Let's go there.
Let's talk about judicial reforms. The president had promised some reforms and also promised taking care of the welfare of judicial officers. What reforms would you want to see in the judiciary? Again, we'll talk about the judiciary seeming like an extension of the executive or a subservient arm of government to the judiciary. What reforms do you hope to see in the coming days?
The challenge with the judiciary is simple. Give the judiciary their financial independence. That's all. And then, of course, there must be check and balance. So when you talk about appointments and what have you, fine, that is provided by the Constitution. But for me, the basic thing is that financial autonomy. Once you give them that autonomy to have access to their funds and manage their funds the way it should be at all levels, both the federal and state, that would be perfect. So, and then if our institutions are functional, those in charge of these arms of government can always be held accountable as to how these funds were used. So, for the judiciary, autonomy. Then for other levels, of course, the courts, the judicial officers, their welfare is something that needs to be taken care of. Apart from that, the workload is much on them. So we need to actually devise means to ensure that the courts, the case load of the court is reduced by probably deploying other means. Of course, at our own level, we're promoting what we call alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, ADR, in ensuring that, in fact, some states have even provided courts for them, courts for all of this to be done. But at that level, too, if you want to do all these reforms internally, it still has to do with funding. So no matter how you look at it, that funding is key in terms of judicial reforms, not only in the judicial arm of government, even in the legislative arm, and indeed the country as a whole.
Staying with that a little, we've had the 2023 elections in February, but then there's still some level of distraction and confusion in the polity as to legitimacy and all of that. We've been talking about that for quite a while. But then, are you worried that there's a bigger responsibility, or this responsibility of choosing who eventually becomes substantive president of the country? It has been pushed to the judiciary, even when there are institutions that naturally should allow Nigerians choose their leaders for themselves. Because it seems like after the elections, Nigerians go out to vote, but at the end of the day, it is left for a panel of judicial officers to decide who it is that truly won the elections. Are you not worried that this is overwhelming the judiciary as it is?
The judiciary basically is established to settle disputes. And for me, the judiciary does not choose who becomes the president. Nigerians do, because sovereignty by law resides with the people when you look at section 17, the section 14 of our Nigerian constitution. But that being said, the process, of course, and by law, if you are aggrieved, you have the right to approach the courts. So even if the election is adjudged the best and the process is best and a winner has emerged and, in quote, that winner seems to be generally accepted, the contestants too have the right to go to court to ventilate their grievance. So if they do that, then it is your ability to prove your case that now determines the outcome of how that matter will be decided. So if the judiciary, of course, is its own responsibility to hear these matters. And so since the matter is before it, I am confident that the judiciary will do the right thing. However, that is based on the evidence that will be provided and also dependent on law. Because every judge takes oath to do justice according to law. So if you provide the evidence, that evidence must be analyzed based on legal rules and principles. And if the legal rules and principles are in line or in tandem with what you have provided, fine. The judges are obligated to decide on that matter based on what they have. And even at that level, if you are not satisfied, there is still room for appeal. You now go up to say that, well, this court has decided, but we are not satisfied. And you profile reasons why you are not satisfied. And of course, the Supreme Court, being the apex court, will look at it and determine. If you are still not satisfied, unfortunately, then you wait maybe when you get to heaven and you begin to ask. But most importantly, the point I'm trying to make is, it is not an easy job for the judiciary. Nobody would take that for granted. But I know we have courageous justices, and they also know what is happening in the society. And based on all that I've said, I'm confident that at the end of the day, the right thing will be done.
You're very good at your confidence, because many Nigerians seem to be losing the confidence in the judiciary as a result of some of the things that they've seen in the last couple of years with the decisions of the court. But that's not for us to discuss this morning. We'll get to and I'm trying to not put you on the spot now, because I don't want to get you in trouble. But this is still within the judiciary. The NBA.
Yes.
Which you are a member of, that some people do not have confidence in the leadership of the NBA, current leadership of the NBA, because they feel like it's hobnobbing a lot with the, government in power.
Well, I'm happy they said leadership, not the NBA itself. So these are two different things. I'm not the one to decide the style of leadership a leader wants to adopt. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So if a leader decides to maybe take a particular style by, leadership is not just about confrontation. People have their style. Some believe in diplomacy. Okay, this is the situation. How do I get a solution? So let's talk. Let's dialogue. Let's look at things objectively. That could be someone's style of leadership. Another person will look at the matter and confront it headlong. And of course, from my own little experience, I will tell you that if you adopt a confrontational style, depending on the circumstance, in most situations, you may not even achieve the desired result. But when you do diplomacy without compromising, it's very important. Without compromising in terms of the right thing, you end up achieving more results. Even inviting the president for the opening ceremony, I hear what some people are saying, why would you invite him and all of that? He has been sworn in as the president. So we must respect him as far as that position is concerned. Until, of course, the outcome of the process which is ongoing. So if the outcome is otherwise, fine. Whoever gets it, they will still follow the person. That is our obligation as citizens. So for me, in terms of his style of leadership, people are free, even as members of the NBA, to, of course, look at it. But again, I expect constructive criticism. Mr. President, these are the things you are doing wrong, and this is the way we think you should go. That way you achieve something better. So once you do that, the president, of course, will respect you for that. And at the end of the day, NBA, as a big family, will continue to grow. Whether you like it or not, NBA has a role to play in this country in terms of promoting the rule of law, and that is fundamentally what we are all about.
Well said. Well, the conversation continues. Let's bring you in 09073530044 and 09087668888. 09073530044 and 09087668888. Send SMS and WhatsApp messages to 09097054450. That is 09097054450. I'm going to take you up on one other issue on the judiciary and elections. I know you're running away from this, but let's talk about it. The Nigerians want to know. Nigerians want to know what it is. What's it? Seems to be the election matters. They say is sui generis, means
Yes.
it's time bound, right?
Yeah.
And the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, since after the parties closed their cases and all, hasn't until now, has until 16th or so of September as a deadline for delivering judgment. And Nigerians are wondering why it is that they haven't been able to pick dates for the judgment yet, considering the fact that this is something that all Nigerians, they say all eyes on the judiciary. Nigerians are waiting on them to deliver judgment. What's the cause of this delay? Do you think that perhaps we need to extend the time frame for judicial or electoral matters to be looked at in court?
Well, I think when you look at the legislative history, you get to know why this whole thing is time bound. We had a situation in Anambra State, for instance. Someone, was elected, was sworn in, and the other party went to court. And that matter took about 3 years or so for it to be finally decided. And the person said, well, after all, I have 4 years. I have done 3, so I had nothing to lose, and he left. So when you now say the whole thing should not be time bound, and elections are sensitive matters, that again will create unnecessary tension.
Would it not be better if we had a situation where people are not sworn into office until all of the matters are resolved?
There can never be vacuum. There can never be vacuum. There must be somebody in authority at every point in time. Of course, you see even in the military setting where you have coup, there's somebody who is always leading. There must be somebody in authority. If not,
perhaps have the elections earlier.
Have elections earlier? What do you mean by that?
Have the elections earlier. Allow time for judicial processes to wrap up before the next person is
I
sworn
think
in.
most of the challenge we have has to do with the need for some form of legislative amendment. It's not really the judiciary per se. What do I mean by that? Now, if we get to a level where we really deploy technology the way we should, I give you an instance. NBA. Every lawyer who is a member of the NBA, when it comes to national elections, you sit in the comfort of your room, you vote. Nigeria as a country, we can do that. So if you now do that, that limits the level of documentary evidence that you need to tender before a tribunal. And every document that is tendered is supposed to be analyzed and looked at by the court. They must evaluate that evidence. So for people to say we have finished and you have not given date, the pressure is much on the judiciary already. So once they give you date, they are adding another pressure. Let's not forget, these are human beings. They need to be alive first to do their job. And it is not a small task. They need to look at all that has been presented. They need to now discuss among themselves and then at the end look at the law before they give their judgment. And they have time. Yes, there is a reason for this whole thing to be time bound. So if you now begin to argue whether the time frame for election petitions should be extended and what have you, I don't think that might be the cause. We should rather strengthen our electoral process to a point where you know that if you lose, you lose. But again, like I had mentioned earlier, it is your constitutional right to go to court. Fine. When you go to court, there should be also, because the process is strengthened, that should also fast track the process of determining election petition matters. So for me, I believe that gradually we'll get there. We'll get there, especially when we deploy technology.
Well said. All right, bringing in callers now 09073530044 and 09087668888. Send SMS and WhatsApp messages to 09097054450. All right, I have a message here, and it's from Bethel Blake. You say, my opinion on strengthening democracy in Nigeria, military should. Okay. Okay, so no, this is not good. You cannot be calling for any incursion into our democracy. That's not right. We wouldn't take that. Okay, Abdullahi Mekano says 80% of Nigerians have lost confidence on the judiciary. Look at the case of the current president of the Senate. The judiciary are in the pocket of the executive, whether we agree or not. It's no longer last hope of the masses. It's an avenue where people's mandates are being stolen really bad. Thank you very much. That's your thoughts, Abdullahi Mekano. And Sanusi says, bravo. God bless the barrister in the studio. He has said it all. Our institutions must be functional. We must respect the rule of law. Happy birthday to my learned brother, Barrister Kunle Shobaloju, presently in Abuja now for NBA annual convention, recently concluded. God bless Nigeria. God bless Eagles FM. Thank you very much, Sanusi. Hello, good morning.
Hello. God bless you, sir.
God bless you. Taking me. Good to have
And
you. And
good morning to your guest, the learned person in the studio.
Thank you.
My name is Fundu. I'm calling from Kano local government, National State. Yes, my prince. Hello.
Go ahead. Let's hear you.
Yes, my prince. You see, our guests have said a lot, but one thing I'm looking up to from our president, who is also the chairman of ECOWAS Union, I'm expecting the.
Takebe, you may want to call us back. Seems like the network did you in there. Call back 09073530044 and 09087668888 to be part of the conversation. Share your thoughts with us as well on WhatsApp. And you can also leave us a message on Facebook and on YouTube where we're streaming live at Eagles FM Abuja. At Eagles FM Abuja. The numbers to send your messages to on WhatsApp and on SMS via SMS 09097054450. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Udoka on the line.
Udokama, it's been a while. Where have you been, Udokama? See you.
I want to ask a question. Is there any international constitution that says that we must practice democracy as Africa? Is there anything like that? Because I can try to practice democracy. The thing is actually working against us. And we the citizens, because the elite, the leaders are enjoying it because it's favoring them. You can see, as your level, you cannot do contest as a local government chairman. If you tell you to lose your money and lose everything, and it is not as if you are not knowledgeable enough. But those who have been our leader for years, since 1960, you know, we say we are in a civilian era. But can you see? You see the same military men that rule till the first day that the Buhari hand over. We have been having them removing their uniform, coming to rule us under democracy, and they use that method of military and their ability to suppress us. That's why we cannot talk. That's why, if it is democracy, something that you are afraid of saying in your studio, you will not be afraid of it. But because you need to balance something, you need to put yourself in order so that you will not be queried. So I want to know, is it more than the recent one? They want to force them to come back to democracy. Is it by force?
All right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I'll let my guest answer this question. Very important, very, very interesting question you put forward, Udokama, on the need to have democracy or the mandate of democracy in Africa. Yes.
Udokama, I understand, and I think I share your feelings because, of course, the root of it is good governance. If we have good governance, nobody will be talking about democracy. For instance, you made mention of the Asian countries and the Arab countries who, strictly speaking, don't practice democracy, but their own citizens are happy, so to speak. But again, you see, let me first of all answer your question directly, whether there is a constitution, a global law, so to speak, that says countries must practice democracy. First and foremost, there is no global document, so to speak, that mandates every country to practice a particular form of governance because of what we refer to as sovereignty of nations. In other words, countries are independent. But again, the law allows them to come together to form a union. That's why we have the African Union, for instance. And that's why we have ECOWAS for the West African region. And you have other regional bodies even in Africa. So these regions or unions of countries can also decide what they want, what they feel is good for them. So in Africa, we have the African Charter on Democracy. Of course, that African Charter on Democracy was adopted by the African Union and its members. And I think that was in 2007 or so. And that African Charter on Democracy seeks to promote what we call liberal democracy. So in Africa, those who are members of this charter, you can say, have agreed that democracy should be the platform through which the people should be governed. But again, that takes me back to my earlier comment. For me as a person, it is not really about democracy per se, it's about institutions. Of course, democracy is good in the sense that it promotes human rights. Some of these forms of governance that you talk about, their major disadvantage is the issue of human rights. You don't have that liberty, so to speak, to do certain things. For instance, if you talk of Saudi Arabia, there was a time, I don't know for now, but women don't even drive vehicles.
No, I think that they reversed that. Women now drive.
So that has been reversed. Go to Afghanistan. Is that reversed? No. So when you talk about democracy, the general notion is that it promotes human rights. So in Africa, you have the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance, which has been adopted by African Union. So at that level, you could say that that is the document. But on the whole, for me, it's just about our institutions. If we allow our institutions to function the way they should, I think we'll get there.
Udokama just brought up the lecturer in you. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Let's get more of your thoughts. 09073530044 and 09087668888. We've been discussing and following up on the the trend of coups in Africa. About 8 of them now on the continent in recent times. Just within a space of 1 month or so, or 2 months, we've had 2 coups, in the country, in the continent. One in Niger Republic, which, ECOWAS and the world is still trying to resolve, and then another one took place yesterday in Gabon, Central Africa. We're looking at that, and also looking at the home front. We were talking about the politics that we play. With in the center of that conversation is the minister of the FCT, who has said, look, the PDP, he has dared anyone to suspend or sanction him in the PDP, and says no one. In fact, he's not going to work for them in the Bielsa elections until he gets an apology from the party. Interesting times we're leaving. He also made a revelation that he's still a member of the PDP. He's not going anywhere, but he is on a national duty in the APC government. Join the conversation. Let's hear from you. 09073530044 and 09087668888. My guest has been Raphael Gabriel Opologidi, Esquire. He's a legal practitioner as well as a lecturer in the Faculty of Law at Benue State University, joining us this morning. Quite an interesting conversation it's been. Hello, good morning.
Hello, my friends. That's whom you take to be calling back. Yes, the network wasn't friendly to me. Yes, I was saying that your guests have really said a lot. One thing I'm actually expecting, in the course of those, writing, here and there, because it's also a threat to Nigeria, because even our president might begin to be afraid that maybe it will still happen here, because there's a possibility. Yes, no one can tell. And for Ali Bongo, having stayed in power for so many years and having also won a third time, it is high time that, leaders in Africa learn to lead the stage when the music is still loud. Why on earth do we want to overstay in power? Give other people a chance. But one thing I want to say is that I wouldn't like the ECOWAS to start going to war with anybody because of coup. What I expect from them is start advocating for poverty, eradication, to start, advocating for good leadership, to start advocating for free and fair election. Because when people rig their way, into power, they will not really be able to be accountable to the people, because they know very well that they were not put there by the people. So they will not want to be, accountable. And you see the way some of our leaders behave, as if they are not accountable to anybody. They are not even accountable to God Almighty, the way they behave. And, one example, you see that priorities were given to governors and they locked them in warehouses until some of them spoiled. When people are going to bed on empty stomach, look at the priorities of sent to Bielsa since 2022. It was some few days ago that people went and broke the warehouse. Some of them already expired. So leadership is a problem, in Africa. So let them advocate for good leadership, poverty eradication, and free and fair election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Takenbe. Before we get, I get my guests to respond to Takenbe. You see, again, like you mentioned earlier, Takenbe believes that good leadership is what Rwanda, for instance. President Paul Kagame has been in office for about 23 years. Seems like the people are not complaining, because they seem to be having a good time and seeing some levels of development in their country. So again, it brings to question whether it is about people just sitting tight in office, or it's about delivering the dividends of democracy to the people.
Well, it's both ways, in the sense that if you look at even Libya, what happened before Gaddafi
Muammar Gaddafi.
was Libya was peaceful. The people were happy. Gaddafi was in office till he was killed, and the people were not complaining. So I think it's also high time for us as Africans to look at what works for us, because most of these concepts that we borrow are European. So we need to, yes, look at the good concepts and see how we can make them part of our own. And then also, traditionally, Africa, we believe in this form of long rule, so to speak. You have monarchs and what have you before the Europeans came and introduced their own form of governance. And of course, created boundaries in terms of countries, so to speak. So, but when we now look at the process of you coming into power and how long you will stay, that is determined by the various laws. So if a law of a country says you can rule for 20 years, that is fine. But the issue now is, for that 20 years, your institutions, are they functional in a level where even you as a president, while in office, could be held accountable? For me, that is the main thing. So if we get that right, in the end, you'll discover that, yes, of course, if the law allows you to stay 20 years, that is lawful in that country. But again, while in office for that 20 years, the institutions that you have, are they such that you too as a president will be held accountable? Because like Tikin rightly pointed out, the problem of Africa mostly has to do with leadership. And so once we have the resources, both human and natural resources, that is not in doubt. But we just need leadership and courage to break away from some of these colonial shackles, if I may want to put it that way. Sometimes it's quite annoying. You are maybe having a summit on Africa, and you are taking yourself to Europe. Does that make any sense? You spend money, and you are talking about Africa, and you are leaving Africa and going to Europe. That doesn't point to the fact that you as a leader, so are you saying the environment is not good for you to talk about Africa, that you have to go
You have
to Europe?
situations where people want to discuss their political matters in Nigeria and they fly out to Europe.
I'm not even talking about politics. That is their own personal business.
Yeah.
It's their own resources. But if you are in governance, you are using state funds, and you want to talk about Africa, and you are spending money to go to Europe to talk about Africa, or go to America to talk about Africa, does that make any sense?
The question. Now, I would let you go until we talk about corruption. Let's talk about corruption for one minute or two. Corruption has been said to be the bane of the problems in Africa. Say for instance, for a country like what do you call it now, Gabon,
Yes.
where the country is rich with oil, several other natural resources. One of the richest countries on the continent, by the way. A population of just less than 2.5 million people, about 2.34 million people by the census last year. And you wonder why it is that there's so much poverty in such a country, even with the natural resources and all that it has. The president and those in power, living good. There was a video that emerged on social media where it was said that money's in boxes and all stashed out in the home of the president. The masses are suffering in spite of the rich natural resources that they have. What do you think we can do to get African leaders to begin to look inwards to develop, the African continent, as against just leaving their wealth to be plundered?
Fine. I think the first thing we need to understand is, when you talk about corruption, it has become a monster in Africa. And if you ask me, there is no leadership that is not corrupt in the world. You can quote me anywhere. The only thing is, their act of corruption, they give it some baptismal name, if I may want to use that word. For instance, to pass a legislation, you hear them talking about lobbying. I mean, if the law is good, pass it. It's as simple as that. What are you lobbying for, and how do you do the lobbying, for instance? But that being said, I think for our leaders, what they need to understand is legacy matters, and you cannot be there forever. So whatever opportunity you have, work with your conscience if you have one. And so if you have conscience, you cannot be a leader and you are living a luxurious life while your subjects are suffering. I mean, you should not be able to sleep comfortably. So when you now lead by example, because for us in Africa, once you see the head getting it right, whether you like it or not, all other things will fall in place. And you too, as a leader, should be aware of the fact that if you have conscience at the end of the day, if you are not held accountable here, the Almighty will also hold you accountable. So if we have that in mind, I think we'll be able to do the right thing. Some may want to do the right thing, but are not courageous enough. So if you must function as a leader and at this point in time, you should also imbibe that spirit of courage to tell yourself that this is what I want to do and I will have to succeed, even if it means giving up my life to do that.
That's well said. Thank you so much. I'd love to. We'll wrap up the conversation now. Thank you to you, Mr. Raphael Gabriel Opologidi, legal practitioner and lecturer, Faculty of Law, BSU. That's Benue State University. It's an interesting conversation it's been with you. Thank you so much for coming around.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And this is where we close it. Thank you to everyone who's been a part.